looking at a live view of the Falcon 9 rocket and Dragon spacecraft set to launch the world's first all-civilian astronaut mission to orbit in just a little over 4 hours. Good afternoon. I am Jesse Anderson, a production and engineering manager here at SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California.
And I'm Andy Tran, a quality engineer. Welcome to the webcast for the Inspiration4 mission. Today is truly an incredible day as our 4 civilian astronauts, Jared Isaacman, Dr. Cyan Proctor, Haley Arsenault, and Chris Sembrowski, prepare to lift off from historic Launch Complex 39A at Kennedy Space Center in Florida. This crew will orbit the Earth for 3 days before splashing down in the Atlantic Ocean, and this will mark the first ever all-civilian mission, meaning that no one on board has a day job as an astronaut. We'll hear more about each of them and the incredible stories that brought them to be part of this mission later on today.
And even though this will be the crew's first trip to space, they are planning to make a big impact to the future of humanity, both here on Earth and beyond. Over the course of their 3-day journey, the Inspiration4 crew will be conducting a wide range of experiments to determine how regular people like you and me respond in a microgravity environment. The data they collect will be invaluable to furthering human exploration of space.
And as if making an impact to our future in space wasn't enough, the Inspiration4 crew is also using this mission to make an impact here on Earth. Inspiration4 Commander Jared Isaacman is using this mission to raise awareness and fundraise for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Jared donated $100 million from his own pocket and is seeking to raise an additional $100 million for this mission. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll see that we've integrated a donation function for viewers. The Inspiration4 mission is currently at about $30 million of the targeted $100 million. So every dollar counts. Please donate if you can, and encourage those around you to donate as well.
It's a really exciting day for us here at SpaceX, and it's already been a busy day for the Inspiration4 crew. And right now, we are currently awaiting walkout of the Inspiration4 crew from our Hangar X location at Cape Canaveral, Florida.
Yes, the crew has had a pretty busy day. They woke up about 3 hours ago and performed some medical checks. And then they finished up their meal, and the doors are opening up. This is the first shot of our Inspiration4 crew members walking out of Hangar X.
This is amazing. There they are, our first all-civilian crew walking out of Hangar X. They look so excited. Right now, they're walking down this pathway, waving hi to family and friends, some SpaceX employees in the crowd as well.
Yes, this must be such an exciting and emotional time for them.
And the crew that you see there on your left-hand side, that was Chris Sembrowski. He is the mission specialist. To his right is Dr. Cyan Proctor, the pilot for this mission.
And to her, to the right of that is Jared Isaacman, the mission commander. And Jared is blocking Haley, but she's in the background there. That is the medical officer, Haley Arsenault.
What a sight to see. They look so excited. And this is just the beginning of the day for them. They're getting ready to get into the Teslas. You can see one of them there, where they will ride to the Falcon support building, which is where the SpaceX suit-up room is. And currently they're at Hangar X. You may be wondering what Hangar X is. This is our brand new facility at SpaceX, designed and built by SpaceX to house our refurbished vehicles.
So some of them are hopping into the car. In the first car, we have Dr. Cyan Proctor with Haley, and following them will be Jared and Chris. You can see the gull-wing doors of the Model X's closing there. And they should be, again, making their way to the Falcon support building. It's a couple miles down the road. They're going to be making a left out of here, heading north on Kennedy Parkway at Kennedy Space Center in Florida.
And they will take this one last moment as they're in their Teslas to say goodbye to their close family and friends. What a sight to see. They must be so excited. They're in their Teslas, about to make their way to the suit-up room. One last goodbye to their family and friends.
Yeah, they do have a long day ahead of them. You can see the countdown timer on the bottom of your screen. We are still 4 hours and some change away from liftoff. There is a lot of procedures that will happen over the next couple of hours, and we'll be here to walk you through all of that, and we'll be able to get some awesome views of the crew going through those procedures as well.
And they are currently sitting in their Teslas. These are not just any Teslas. These are the Teslas that we have used if you followed our crew missions. These are specially designed Teslas made to accommodate our SpaceX spacesuits. So they will utilize these even after they make it to the Falcon support building to drive to the launch pad. And there they are pulling off from Hangar X, now on their way to the Falcon support building, to our new SpaceX suit-up room.
Yes, there's a third Tesla there. That is support staff members of the closeout crew to support the astronauts in any way possible. So again, in the first car, we have Haley and Dr. Cyan Proctor. And in the second car, we have Chris and Jared. This is the first time that we get to see inside of the Teslas. This is so exciting.
Oh, this is amazing. This is such an amazing view. It almost feels like we get to ride with them in the car.
Chris looking very cool with his sunglasses.
I love it. While we watch the crew make their way to the suit-up room, let's take a moment to get more acquainted with our first all-civilian crew. Jared Isaacman is the Inspiration4 commander. He is the 38-year-old founder and chief executive officer of Shift4 Payments. He is a father, husband, and accomplished world record-holding pilot. Jared has flown in over 100 air shows, dedicating every performance flight to charitable causes, and today's flight is no different. The mission is named Inspiration4 in recognition of the four-person crew's mission to inspire support for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. As a part of Inspiration4's public outreach, Isaacman made a personal $100 million commitment to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. He's hoping to raise upward of $200 million to support the nonprofit with this mission. Today's flight would not be possible without Jared's philanthropic dedication. Here's more about the New Jersey native and self-described aviation and aerospace fan.
I grew up in New Jersey, and when I was a kid, I wanted to grow up and be a doctor. My older brother's a doctor. I watched like the show ER as a kid, and I thought that's pretty cool. I think, saving lives is a pretty important thing. But, life took me in a different direction. My interest in like aviation and aerospace goes back like since I was a kid. I mean, the first like computer I built, I was playing like Falcon 2.0 and then, upgraded to play Falcon 3.0. I went to like Aviation Challenge, which is part of Space Camp as a kid. I was a, observer of SpaceX from like, the outside looking in like a lot of people. And then, my opportunity to kind of see what the inside was like began in October of 2020 when the idea of Inspiration4 started to come about. A big part of what we're trying to achieve with Inspiration4 is to send, an inspiring message really to the world about what is certainly possible up there in space, but also what we can accomplish here on Earth as well, which is why, this massive fundraising effort for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital is such a big part of our mission. To me, having some balance where you're trying to tackle a problem of today so you can earn the right to keep making progress tomorrow is just a philosophy I've tried to live by for some time. The advice I would give my younger self, you can aim high, you can dream big, and even things that people would say is next to impossible, you can accomplish it. I totally believe like we all have, that fundamental obligation to leave the world a better place than we found it. I'm Jared Isaacman, and I'm the commander of Inspiration4.
For this first all-civilian mission to orbit, Jared wanted his crewmates to represent the best of humanity, pillars he's identified as leadership, hope, generosity, and prosperity. As commander of the mission, Jared holds the seat of leadership. For the seat of hope, Jared went to St. Jude and was introduced to Haley Arsenault.
Haley Arsenault of Memphis, Tennessee is the medical officer of the Inspiration4 mission, overseeing medical care and experiments. She's a 29-year-old physician's assistant at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, the same place that saved her life after being diagnosed with bone cancer at the age of 10. Haley's treatment at St. Jude included chemotherapy and limb-sparing surgery that resulted in removing most of her femur bone and replacing it with a prosthetic. She represents a couple of firsts for this mission that's already going to be the first civilian mission going into space. Haley will be the youngest American to go into space and the first person to go into space with a prosthetic body part. Here's more on Haley, who occupies the seat of hope on the Inspiration4 mission.
I'm so excited to be going to space, and I'm just a regular person. I am so lucky that I got a phone call asking if I wanted to go to space. I'm from Louisiana. I was a super active, super outgoing kid, involved in everything, and I actually had just gotten my black belt in Taekwondo a couple days before I was diagnosed with cancer. I definitely am excited to represent those that aren't physically perfect. I want to bring this experience back and share with everyone I encounter, and just what this represents for the new age in space travel and who can be an astronaut. I've thought a lot about launch day. I've even had some dreams about launch day, and I still don't know what will be going through my mind. I know I'm going to be
with the T-minus 4-hour situational awareness
Of course,
briefing.
I have the window seat.
We're currently
looking
counting
out the
down to a
window and seeing Earth from
T000256
space
UTC or
is going to be so incredible. Can't even put
20:02:56
into
local
words.
time,
What I'm
with a minimum of
absolutely
2
most
additional
excited
liftoff
about is we're
opportunities
gonna
if
call the
required.
St. Jude patients
The
from
crew are currently in
space.
transit from Hangar X
I'll
to
get
Launch
to video
Complex
call these
39A's
kids that I've gotten
suit-up
to
room.
treat, and these
The
kids
advanced
going
team is
through
currently on the way to the
cancer
pad to open
treatment
the
and
side
getting to show
hatch
them
and
what
prepare
life
for crew
after
arrival.
cancer can look like.
Vehicle gases are at
It's
me out.
been incredible
STS
for me to
checkouts are
watch
complete.
how much this mission has already touched the kids at St. Jude and how much hope it's given them. I love this one little girl I talked to recently. She said, I can't wait to be an astronaut. Like, there was no if in there. She just couldn't wait for it to happen. I think that's what hope is. I am Haley Arsenault, Medical Officer of Inspiration4.
As part of the effort to raise money for St. Jude, Jared decided to give away one seat to a person at random who donated to the St. Jude cause. That seat, the seat of generosity, went to Christopher Sombrosky. Christopher Sombrosky of Seattle, Washington is the mission specialist of today's flight, helping to manage payload, science experiments, and communications to mission control. He is a 42-year-old mechanical and diagnostics lead at Lockheed Martin and a United States Air Force veteran. As an amateur astronomer, he grew up with a natural curiosity about outer space and even worked as a U.S. Space Camp counselor. He was awarded the Seat of Generosity after contributing to a special fundraising campaign for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Let's meet Chris, the Inspiration4 mission specialist.
When I found out I was going to space, I was dumbfounded. I think I was just struck dumb for days. The seed was planted for me to fall in love with space when I was little and started launching little rockets in my front yard with my dad, the first of which is still probably stuck in a Florida pine tree somewhere. But when I first saw a space shuttle launch in person from the causeway, 6 to 8 miles away, you could still feel that rumble pounding through your chest. That kind of just shifted my foundation a little bit, and I knew from there on out I had to be somehow a part of space. Whether it was helping support a mission or lobbying for folks to be able to go into space, that's where I wanted to be. Of course, I'm going to be looking down at my home in Western Washington. I'm also looking to see what I don't see, and that's going to be lines on a map or those walls that seem to separate all of us ideologically or politically or even geographically or physically. Those don't exist when you get far enough out, and I'm really hoping to bring back that sense of what it means to only have that one small line that matters to all of us, and that's the atmosphere that keeps us separated from the vacuum of space. As we get to launch day, I am gonna have the biggest smile going ear to ear. It's gonna be, I'm gonna be shaking with excitement. No fears or jitters at all about what's going to happen, but man, that's gonna be a heck of a show. I'm Chris Sombrosky, mission specialist of Inspiration4.
As an entrepreneur beginning in his teenage years, Jared reserved the 4th seat for someone who exemplified the entrepreneurial spirit. This 4th seat, representing prosperity, was awarded to Dr. Cyan Proctor. Dr. Cyan Proctor of Tempe, Arizona is the pilot on board today's flight. She's a 51-year-old entrepreneur, educator, trained pilot, and active voice in the space exploration community. Her motto is Space to Inspire, and she encourages people to use their unique, one-of-a-kind strengths and passions to inspire others. She uses her space to inspire art to encourage conversations about creating a Jedi space, a just, equitable, diverse, and inclusive space for all of humanity. Dr. Cyan was awarded the Seat of Prosperity after being selected as the top entrant of an independently judged online business competition conducted by the Shift4 Shop e-commerce platform. Let's meet Dr. Proctor, the Inspiration4 pilot.
The day of launch, I'm going to be thinking about how my entire life has led up to this moment. I was born on the island of Guam, and the reason why I was born there is that my dad worked for the NASA tracking station. And so I feel like space has always been a part of me. When I got that call, that Zoom, and Jared was on there and he said that, you know, they picked me for the prosperity seat, that I was going to go to space with him and be part of the Inspiration4, it really was like getting the golden ticket for Willy Wonka. Everything in my life finally came into focus, and I realized that it was all about this moment in time. I won the prosperity seat for Inspiration4, and I did that not as a geoscientist or an explorer or an analog astronaut, which are all on my resume. I actually won this as a poet and an artist. We are striving for that Star Trek generation, that idea of a just, equitable, diverse, and inclusive space, or a Jedi space. I'm gonna be the first Black female pilot of a spacecraft ever. And to me, that just blows me away. And I wanna encourage the next generation to dream that this is possible. And a Jedi space, that's what that's about. I'm Dr. Cyan Proctor, and I'm the mission pilot for Inspiration4.
If you're interested in learning more about the Inspiration4 crew and how they came together for this mission, you are in luck. Netflix and Time have been following the Inspiration4 crew in the lead up to their mission, and the first 4 episodes of the 5-part series are now available on Netflix. The 5th and final episode will be available not too long after splashdown and will include an insider look at their time on orbit.
Yes, the docuseries is really well done. I think it's super cool that just a few days after this mission completes, we'll have the 5th and final episode. So it's almost like we get to experience what they experience real time.
Yeah, I love that part of the docuseries. It's like you get to see the before. We're going to see launch today, and then we'll get a little bit of a recap afterwards. And it looks like on your screen, those Teslas are pulling up to the Falcon support building. This is the building that has our new SpaceX suit-up room. So the crew, once they park here, will get out shortly.
Yeah, if you've been following along on previous missions, specifically with NASA astronauts, things look a little bit different today. Typically, we suit up in the astronauts will suit up in the Neil Armstrong Operations and Checkout Facility, also known as the ONC facility. That is located a little bit closer to Hangar X, where we saw the crew walk out. For today's mission, the crew will be suiting up in the Falcon Support Building, which is actually located fairly close to the Launch Pad 39A.
There's the crew making their way inside of the Falcon Support Building. And again, just as Andy mentioned, today is not a NASA mission. This is a mission for Inspiration4 with SpaceX. So we now have our own facilities, our own suit-up room that we'll be utilizing today, which they are currently entering right now.
Yeah, so when they get inside, they'll have a mission and weather briefing. They'll also get tablets, which has all of the information and procedures they'll need and their schedule throughout the mission. And then they'll also don their spacesuits, the super cool, sleek-looking spacesuits.
Yeah, and the really cool part about this is the process is similar to NASA. We just have different facilities that we're utilizing with some minor things that are a little bit different. But every step of the process is in their process, in those tablets. So even going from Hangar X to getting inside of their Teslas, getting out of the Teslas into the Falcon support building. So every step of this is written out, and they're following it just as procedure.
Yes, yes. Later on in the webcast, we're going to talk a little bit more about what the astronauts have been doing. As Jesse mentioned, not just today, but throughout the last 6, 7, or 8 months, they've been very, very busy. Their schedules are jam-packed. They're learning a lot of things, doing a lot of cool things. But yes, here's a view of the Falcon 9 rocket, and sitting on top of that is the Dragon spacecraft that will be taking them to orbit in just under 4 hours.
Yeah, and just to note, you can see the soot on the vehicle. This is going to be a reflown vehicle. This will be its 3rd flight today. And the Dragon vehicle sitting on top is Dragon Resilience, which flew on the Crew 1 mission just last year.
Yes, this vehicle came back in May of this year and has been undergoing refurbishment and checkouts to make sure it is ready for flight. The first stage down below, this is going to be its 3rd time flying. So the Inspiration4 crew has arrived at SpaceX's Falcon support building, which is the home to our brand new suit-up room. And you'll notice that this happens to be right across the street from historic launch pad at 39A, which is where the crew will lift off in just under 4 hours from now. This is the same launch pad that NASA used for the Apollo missions that first put people on the moon back in 1969.
Once the crew is inside the Falcon support building, the SpaceX team will brief the crew with weather and launch details and give them their tablets, which they will bring with them on the flight. At T-minus 3 hours and 20 minutes, the crew will begin suiting up for the world's first all-civilian mission to space. Once they are suited up, they will exit the Falcon support building and get back into their Teslas. We will have 2 astronauts in each of the Teslas, led by a support vehicle. The crew will make that short drive to the launch pad, and once they arrive, the crew will ascend the fixed service structure in an elevator up to the 255-foot level.
The crew will then take these stairs up the last 10 feet and then head through the crew access arm, where they will make one final stop and a final phone call before walking down the crew arm to the White Room. And the White Room is their last stop before climbing into the spacecraft, a process known as crew ingress. During ingress, the SpaceX team will run a series of checks to ensure the suits, the seats, and vehicle interactions are all functioning properly.
After all the vehicle and crew checkouts are completed, the SpaceX closeout team will close Dragon's side hatch and depart the pad. At T-minus 40 minutes, the crew access arm will retract away, followed by the arming of the launch escape system. Now, once the arm is retracted and the escape system is armed, propellant loading on Falcon 9 will begin. At T-minus 5 minutes, Dragon will be configured for what we call terminal count. Now, this is when Dragon's onboard computers take control of the spacecraft.
And finally, at T0, Dragon and Falcon will lift off from pad 39A. Roughly 12 minutes after liftoff, Dragon will separate from Falcon 9's 2nd stage and spend the next 3 days conducting science and taking in breathtaking views as they orbit around the Earth.
At this point, the crew should be heading into their first briefing of the day. Now, during the briefing, the crew will receive their tablets, which is kind of like the SpaceX version of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Their tablets have everything that they need for the mission. And in addition, the briefing will cover the expected liftoff schedule as well as any weather impacts.
Now, weather is always an important factor for any launch, but for this mission, it's a bit more complicated than usual. All of SpaceX's previous missions carrying humans has been destined for the International Space Station, where the crew would stay for an extended period of time. For this mission, the crew is not going to the International Space Station and will return to Earth in about 3 days' time. Therefore, we need to ensure that we have good weather not only for liftoff, but also for splashdown.
Our recovery teams have been monitoring all 7 of the possible landing sites in the days leading up to this mission. And at this point, we are currently a go at both liftoff and primary splashdown site. The teams will continue to monitor weather throughout the countdown and will make the necessary adjustments if anything changes.
So while the Inspiration4 crew is getting their briefing on current status, let's get our very own briefing on the vehicles that will be taking the crew to orbit today with our very own Kate Tice.
Hey team, my name is Kate Tice and I'm a senior certification engineer here at SpaceX. Now, some of you are very familiar with the vehicles on the launch pad today, but for those of you who aren't, no worries, I'm about to make you an instant expert. This is a live view of our Falcon 9 rocket out at pad 39A, and it has a Dragon spacecraft on top, known as Crew Dragon. Together, they stand about 229 feet tall, or slightly taller than a 21-story building. Falcon 9 is a reusable two-stage rocket, which means it's kind of like two rockets in one, the first stage and the second stage. The first stage is the bottom two-thirds of the rocket. You might notice it's a little different in color than the second stage. That's actually soot that remains from the previous two missions that this booster supported. The first stage is responsible for accelerating Falcon and Dragon through the Earth's atmosphere and into space. To do that, it has 9 Merlin engines at the bottom of the rocket, which we can't really see here. Prior to liftoff, the Falcon 9 first stage is loaded up with nearly 1 million pounds of fuel and liquid oxygen. At liftoff, those Merlin engines will use that fuel and liquid oxygen to provide the Falcon 9 first stage with a thrust greater than 5 747 airplanes at full power, consuming 700 gallons of fuel per second. The first stage is what accelerates the vehicle through the Earth's atmosphere and into space, and then about 2.5 minutes into flight, it will separate away from the second stage. From there, the first stage will do what no other orbital class rocket in the world can do. It's going to make its way back to Earth and target a landing on our drone ship named Just Read the Instructions. That drone ship is currently parked and holding a position a couple hundred miles off the Atlantic coast of Florida. Our drone ships are essentially autonomous, powered spaceports that allow our first stage rocket to land over the ocean. Now, for reference, our drone ships are equivalent to the size of a football field. So while they might look smaller on your screen, they're pretty gigantic in real life. Like I mentioned already, this is a two-stage rocket, and above the first stage is the second stage. The second stage has a single Merlin vacuum, or MVAC engine, and that will ignite after the first stage separates. At full power, the Merlin vacuum engine operates with the greatest efficiency ever for an American-made hydrocarbon rocket engine. The second stage is essentially a smaller version of the first stage, and whereas the first stage is designed to power the vehicle out of the Earth's atmosphere and defy the forces of gravity, the second stage is specifically designed to operate in the vacuum of space. The second stage powers the Dragon spacecraft to its targeted drop-off orbit. Now let's talk about Crew Dragon. It's capable of carrying up to 7 passengers to and from Earth orbit and beyond. But for today's mission, it's carrying the 4 members of the Inspiration4 crew. It's the first private spacecraft to take humans to the International Space Station and the only spacecraft currently flying that's capable of returning significant amounts of cargo to Earth. Like the Falcon 9 first stage, the Dragon spacecraft is also reusable. In fact, the Dragon that the Inspiration4 crew is flying in today, which you see right there, that was first used to fly NASA astronauts to and from the space station on the Crew 1 mission that launched back in November 2020. However, for the Inspiration4 mission, this capsule has one notable change, a new cupola observation dome that has replaced the docking mechanism. Oh, you see that there on your screen now. It has replaced the docking mechanism previously used to autonomously dock with the space station. We'll get to talk a little bit more about that cupola later on in the broadcast, but right now, let's take a minute to look at the Inspiration4 mission profile.
Thank you, Kate. It's always cool to learn more about the rocket, and I am so excited about the Dragon cupola. But let's talk a little bit about the mission profile. So a couple of things that are different today, since we're not going to be going to the International Space Station. The team will be spending 3 days in orbit, but they're also going to be flying higher than any other human has flown before since the Apollo missions.
Yeah, they're going to an orbit of 575 kilometers. And just for some perspective, the International Space Station flies at about 400 to 425 kilometers, and the Hubble telescope at 547 kilometers. And you can see that on the graphic on your screen, how much further out from Earth Dragon and the Inspiration4 crew will be flying.
Yeah, to get into this orbit, after Dragon separates from the second stage, it has 2 burns spaced about 45 minutes apart. The first burn will raise the altitude of the orbit, and the second burn will circularize it to that 575-kilometer orbit.
And this is one of my favorite parts about this, because they will be orbiting and flying so quickly, they'll be orbiting the Earth about 15 times a day. And what they'll get to see is about 15 sunrises and 15 sunsets, which is pretty incredible. And just a note, the International Space Station actually sees 16 orbits a day because they're a little bit closer to Earth. So being a little further out away from Earth, they actually take a little bit longer to make it around the Earth.
Yeah, in order to orbit the Earth, you have to be traveling at very, very high velocities. The Dragon will be going upwards of 17,500 miles an hour. So that is very, very quick. And like Jesse mentioned, it is super cool that they're going to almost see the best parts of the day on fast forward, right? 15 sunsets and sunrises every single day.
Right, that's going to be a pretty incredible view for the crew. And there you can see Mission Control there at the Cape. Firing Room 4. Now this is the one of the 2 control rooms for today. This is Launch Control and Firing Room 4 at Cape Canaveral. Now this control room is responsible for monitoring Falcon 9 throughout the countdown up until launch. And then second, we have Mission Control here at SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. The team in Mission Control takes over at liftoff and is responsible for close monitoring of the crew and Dragon every step of the way as the spacecraft orbits the planet along this customized flight path. Now on console or headset are a number of key positions who are monitoring the health of the vehicle and the crew. The mission director, responsible for mission success, is in charge of the room.
First thing you hear talking to the astronauts is the Crew Operations and Resource Engineer, or CORE. There she is on screen. That's Sarah Gillis. If you've watched the docuseries, we've gotten to know Sarah quite a bit. The other positions are focused on things like navigation and control of the vehicle, avionics, software, propulsion, life support systems, and communications with ground segments. Different members of the SpaceX team will rotate through these positions throughout the mission to ensure 24/7 coverage of the crew and Dragon through splashdown a few days from now. Now that, my friends, is a brief overview of the missions and profile for the world's first all-civilian mission to orbit. With that, let's get the latest on the weather and vehicle status from lifelong rocket engineer and Reddit fan favorite, John Insprucker. John, how are we doing?
Thanks, Andy. I'm John Insprucker, Falcon 9 Principal Integration Engineer here at SpaceX. We're currently just over T-minus 3 hours, 39 minutes to go. And a short time ago, at T-minus 3 hours, 45 minutes, the crew received their weather briefing. The good news is the weather around the world is looking good for a launch opportunity tonight. We have a 10% probability of violating weather constraints, which is like a 90% chance of good weather. We're going to be watching the ground level winds. We're going to be looking for anvil clouds, possible pop-up thunderstorms. But right now, 10% probability violation in Florida late in the summer. That's really a nice low number. So things are looking good both there and also at contingency landing sites around the world. Plus, we also have to look ahead 3 days to when the crew is going to land to make sure that the weather conditions at a landing site there will also be good. The good news right now, weather looks good tonight and for the next few days. Now currently on the launch pad, Falcon 9 is powered up. We performed engine checkouts between T-minus 8 hours and T-minus 5 hours. You see Falcon 9 there with the crew access arm up around Dragon. Gas storage tank pressurization was also performed on the first and second stages. Now our next major activity is going to come about as we reach the T-minus 2 hour mark and Falcon begins final checks for launch. That'll include communication checks with the crew, and then propellant loading will begin at T-minus 35 minutes as usual for a Falcon countdown. Now on top of the Falcon 9, just in front of the crew access arm you see there is the Dragon spacecraft. It's a quiet time for the Dragon capsule and the mission team, but it is starting to pick up. Now the launch pad is currently cleared of all personnel, except we did clear in about 20 minutes ago the advanced team to head on up to the White Room, and they'll be supporting the arrival and ingress of the crew, getting the capsule ready, making sure the cabin speaker is set up, things like that. So they were cleared, they're headed up. We're waiting to hear that they are now in the tower and making their way to the White Room. We ought to hopefully get a view here shortly and they'll begin preparation of the arrival of Inspiration4 crew. Now, as a reminder, today's launch of Dragon does not go to the International Space Station. So that means we're going to get a launch window that is just over 5 hours long instead of the usual 1 second window we have for ISS launches. Now, when we fly to the space station, we have to launch in synchronization to when the space station orbit passes overhead. And for maximum performance, we target a specific 1 second period of time for launch. Now, the Inspiration4 crew doesn't have that constraint. So that gives us a larger window that provides margin if the weather, for example, caused a delay this evening, or if we have issues that require more time to resolve on Dragon, on Falcon, and the ground systems. But once we do start propellant loading at T-minus 35 minutes, that will commit us to launching. We won't be able to try to stop and reload propellant and launch later in the evening. But the good news right now, coming up at T-minus 3 hours and 35 minutes, everything is go for launch.
Thank you, John I. Now, you've been a rocket engineer pretty much your entire life and spent about 30 years with the Air Force. So you're pretty familiar with the launch countdown. For the viewers that may be watching for the very first time, can you explain a little bit about what the purpose of the countdown is?
I used the word synchronization a minute ago, Jesse. The countdown is our framework that the launch team uses to make sure that all the final checks are being made in the right order to ensure a safe flight. And so we have to get ready for launch. That means rocket computers, ground computers, people who are on the network, they all prepare the rocket and the spacecraft. And the countdown is that structure that synchronizes these teams to make sure that we do things in the right order. So one example that you're going to see later on is the propellant and launch readiness poll. We do that before we load the propellant onto the vehicle. Now, it seems kind of obvious, but the countdown manual says do the poll first, and then you can move into loading propellant. There are many what they call interlocks in the procedure. It says make sure you do this step before you do this one, because that's the safest way to count the rocket down and prepare the Falcon 9 and the Dragon for spaceflight.
Yeah, and that all happens like literally right before liftoff, right? I guess that gives us the best security that we know that everything is ready to go before we lift off, right?
Now, one of the things that we've tried to emphasize over the years is to try to test the systems of the rocket as close to liftoff as possible. Now, we did some testing overnight at T-minus 8 hours, T-minus 5 hours. There's some things that take hours to do, like pressurizing the rocket. But on other things, you will hear, for example, in the last 4 minutes or so of the countdown, we will move the upper stage engine nozzle a little bit with the guidance system. So we're doing that just as close to launch as we can to make darn sure that the hydraulic system is really ready to go and fly the rocket. In fact, the first stage engines, we move those nozzles about T-minus 4 seconds, just 2 seconds before we then begin the engine ignition sequence. So all told, you try to move the stuff as close to launch as you can without overloading the team, having to, or the computers to look at too much happening too fast.
Yeah, I think Dragon and Falcon are a largely autonomous vehicle. And one of the things that we hear as we get under the 1 minute mark is Falcon 9 flight computers have taken over. What does that exactly mean, John?
There's two different call-outs that you'll hear. Dragon has a set of flight computers, obviously, because it does its own mission. Falcon 9 has computers on both the first and second stage. When we get inside of a minute, there is a handoff command that says most of the things that are going to be done are run by the computers on Dragon or the Falcon 9. But we also have ground computers that'll do things like, you'll see the water come up around the rocket. So that'll be commanded by ground computers. But startup is essentially, we're doing that last 60 seconds, we're pressurizing the tanks for flight, we're doing last minute valve checks, and then we're going to send the ignition sequence command to the engines and spin them up. And then when everything's right, the Falcon 9 flight computer, when it says, hey, we're at full power, that will tell the ground, open up the hydraulic arms, and away we go.
Amazing. Thank you so much, the all-knowing John I.
Our crew today, Jared, Cyan, Haley, and Chris, have been training for this journey pretty much ever since the announcement that they'd all been selected as crewmates for the Inspiration4 mission back in March. What's super cool is that they're going through the same Dragon training as our NASA astronauts. To prepare the Inspiration4 crew for their mission, our teams at SpaceX have spent the last several months teaching the crew about orbital mechanics, how to live in microgravity, and even running simulations of what the full mission will look like while seated in Dragon.
The Inspiration4 crew has completed numerous simulations, including a 30-hour and 12-hour end-to-end simulation in our Dragon trainer. They not only trained at SpaceX, but also did centrifuge training and also flew some fighter jets, which you can see on your screen. This is a photo from their weekend event of flying the aerobatic
Yeah, they're very fun and exciting weekend where they're just ripping up the skies, doing barrel rolls in their jets.
Yeah, the crew also completed a zero-G flight, which simulates microgravity. And there you can see them there basically flying already. They also have climbed Mount Rainier in Washington, which from the Netflix series, man, that looked like a very tough, but very necessary team building event.
They're doing it with smiles on their face here, but the docuseries, it was a tough hike. Almost 10 hours of hiking, almost vertically. So congrats to the team there. That is one heck of a hike.
Yeah, pretty amazing. And they were also even able to follow the tradition of the Crew 2 crew members, and they were able to sign their own booster. So this is them in front of their signatures on the booster that's literally on the pad right now.
So cool.
This means that this team has studied nearly 100 different training lessons covering all aspects of the mission. At the end of training each week, the crew recorded video diaries of their experiences. In their own words, here's the crew talking about their various training over the last 6 months.
Jared Isaacman here, Commander Inspiration4, and we're like 4 months and a day away from our intended launch date.
This week was really intense because we had a lot of the systems. We got to go into the sim.
Going through some CRM training and looking at what the mission overview is going to look like.
Talked a lot about teamwork and the SpaceX culture.
Week 2 of training at SpaceX complete. This was a heavy week.
I just completed another week at SpaceX and it was intense.
A lot of good building blocks. So you start in the beginning of the week with smaller things like losing comms to, okay, some circumstances are not so good, and then some get really bad where you have to, plan an emergency deorbit, which we initiate ourselves in that.
But man, challenging. I didn't realize how much upper body strength I need, so I need to hit the gym the next couple of months and build up some more muscles.
Today was my favorite day of training because today was the medical training day.
Learn some more about some of the medical experiments we're going to be working with and helping to advance what we know about humans in spaceflight.
We've all contributed all sorts of fluids now to the greater scientific cause.
But the best part is we all got in our spacesuits together.
We got to wear spacesuits, strap into the simulator, and feel like we were actually going to space.
Hello again, Chris here, and it's August 2nd, 2021, 44 days from our launch here in September. Everything keeps going to plan, and it's been an incredible week last week, working with SpaceX teams down at Kennedy Space Center, and then back here in Hawthorne this week for some sims.
This spacesuit that I got fitted for about 7 months ago, I actually get to see and try on and do a bunch of maneuvers in to make sure that it's comfortable and that I can move. And I am just so excited for this because, this is the spacesuit I'm gonna wear leaving the planet.
I'm just so honored and thankful and grateful to be a part of this historic mission and a part of the SpaceX team.
Y'all are working so hard to get to Mars and beyond. We want to provide great data, and we're really excited to be part of this.
All right, well, thanks everybody for a fantastic time here in Hawthorne and also down at Kennedy. We've been doing training down there as well, so really appreciate everything you guys been doing.
This is my final call here from SpaceX, so Rook signing off.
So cool seeing those personal vlogs. Now, as part of their extensive training over the last 6 months, the crew also got extensive amount of training on a bunch of science. Specifically, the crew learned how to conduct a wide variety of science experiments on themselves and each other, all of which help inform both of which help inform how humans best live in space. These experiments were designed by the Translational Research Institute for Space Health, also known as TRISH. Joining us now from Cape Canaveral is Jimmy Wu, a senior biomedical engineer with TRISH. Hey, Jimmy.
Hey, Kate.
Thanks so much for joining us. Can you tell us a little bit about what a senior biomedical engineer does?
Yeah, sure. My role really is to look at the cutting edge of research and technology that keeps humans healthy on Earth, and then work with those researchers and those engineers to see how we could apply it into space, how we could implement it so that we can keep humans healthy in space. And then really the ultimate benefit is to be able to return those improvements back to Earth so that it can help humanity.
Sounds like a pretty important job. In layman's terms, what is TRISH and why is it important to us?
Yeah, so TRISH has a partnership with NASA's Human Research Program. And so I kind of want to use an analogy of what SpaceX was to NASA when SpaceX came on board, about a decade ago. And NASA asked SpaceX, hey, can you make rocket launches cheaper and more accessible to everyone? And so TRISH kind of has that same relation with NASA, where the Human Research Program has asked us to say, can you make biomedical research and medical health can you look at that and make that more accessible to everyone? Can you look at other ways that we could do research to help be more innovative, to be more entrepreneurial, to bring in new ideas, new industries to help contribute to keeping humans healthy in space?
Awesome. Now, in terms of the Inspiration4 mission, can you tell us a little bit about what's unique about this particular research effort?
Yeah, I think what's really unique is it's really intended for the ordinary individual, right? And so when you talk about NASA research, their population is the professional astronauts. Well, the Inspiration4 crew is average, ordinary individuals like you and I. And so we have to modify and adapt the science so that it's easier for them to implement. And as you saw earlier with the earlier clip, they're doing experiments on themselves. They're doing experiments with each other. And so they're not trained on how to do that. And so what ends up happening is what we're learning is not just the data that's being collected about them and how their body changes in spaceflight, but it's also how do we collect that data. And if we can make the means of collection a lot easier for ordinary individuals like the Inspiration4 crew, it means we can also do that for the average person here on the planet Earth.
That's a really interesting point. Can you go into a little bit more detail on what you mean by making that available to everyone here on Earth?
Yeah, okay, sure, I'd love to. So the experiments are involving ultrasound, blood draw, collecting vital health monitoring information, sensory motor data, and some psychological performance data. So normally, if you do that on Earth, you usually go to the doctor's office, you go in a laboratory, and there is a trained person who does that. And so that means that you have to go to a place that it has a limited access, so you have to make an appointment and things like that. And so what we've done with the technology, as you will see with the Inspiration4 crew, is they can take care of themselves. They can collect the data themselves, and you're already sort of seeing that with, for example, the health monitoring, right? They've got the Apple Watch devices that allow them. We see that today with our consumer market, where we're kind of in charge of our own health. It basically gives the individual and empowers the individual to take care of themselves. And I think ultimately that's what it comes back to is. What we're doing here at TRISH is it's not just healthcare for people in space, but it's also healthcare for all of us on Earth. And I think to me that's really the message I want to share with everyone.
Awesome. I'm really happy to hear that. I think we have some demonstrations later on in the webcast with some of those collection items that you mentioned. Now, of everything that we've spoken about so far, which of these research projects that are going up are you most excited about?
Oh, that's not really a fair question. These are really all our babies, right? I mean, how do you pick your favorite child? So, I think to answer your question, it would probably be the butterfly ultrasound project. Probably because prior to joining TRISH, I worked at NASA Johnson Space Center supporting the medical devices that the astronauts use to stay healthy, and I've seen the iteration of ultrasound over the years. And so I'm really excited about this device because it's smaller, it's lighter, it's easy to use. It is fantastic. And just to see the evolution of ultrasound in spaceflight and being part of that, that's what I'm excited about. I'm most proud of, and I'm excited to see where we can go with this crew, and then going into the future as well for human spaceflight.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Jimmy Wu, Senior Biomedical Engineer at Trish. Thank you so much for joining us today. At this point, we are 3 hours and 21 minutes away from launching these experiments with the Inspiration4 crew. Let's head back over to the desk and check in with Andy.
Jimmy, Kate, thank you so much. In addition to all of the awesome science going up on today's mission, the Inspiration4 team is also using this mission to bring awareness and help fundraise for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. In 1962, the same year an American orbited the Earth for the first time, St. Jude Children's Hospital opened up in Memphis, Tennessee, committed to finding cures for kids with cancer and other life-threatening diseases, regardless of their race, ethnicity, beliefs, or family's ability to pay. Treatments invented at St. Jude's help push the overall childhood cancer survival rate from 20% to more than 80% in the United States. However, in many developing countries, fewer than 1 in 5 children diagnosed with cancer will survive. St. Jude has a bold mission to change that.
Some days it feels like it's never gonna stop.
It's kind of a mental war. Sometimes you just feel like it's not gonna get any better.
Lo primero que le pregunté a mi papá fue, papi, yo me voy a morir. When you go through suffering, you learn a lot about yourself. Good stuff comes out of every bad situation.
Dark circles all around my eyes. I was just out of it.
In one moment, those 3 words, you have cancer, and my whole life changed.
Without cancer, who am I?
I feel like I could do anything. I could go to college, be a nurse, be a doctor, anything.
I'm a straight A student, focusing on getting my bachelor's degree in journalism. I'm just doing one step at a time.
I would like to go in the filming industry. It's kind of always been something awesome to me, but it's gonna take some work. While I was going through chemo, I learned how to read greens. I chipped and putted, I worked on sand shots, stuff that I would need to know. The best score I've had is an 86, but I really want to get down to 85 or less. I've been working at it, and I think that that's achievable now.
I'm not the same person I was when I first went into this. I'm a better human being and individual because I went through St. Jude. It wasn't like a hospital, it was like a fun-loving community, a family.
You and I have vowed that we will do everything in our power to bring about the defeat of these catastrophic diseases. St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, world-renowned. I need your help. Advancements in pediatric science. I can't do it alone. And clinical care. Please help me. We're going to treat children of every creed, nationality, and color. And by the grace of God, it shall be done.
The Inspiration4 mission is part of an ambitious fundraising goal to give hope to all kids with cancer and other life-threatening diseases. The goal is to raise $200 million for St. Jude. Jared committed $100 million of his own money, and the team raised almost $30 million so far, but we still got a ways to go. If you're watching on the SpaceX YouTube channel, you'll notice that there's a donation button where you can make your own contribution. Any amount, big or small, makes a big difference. So it's super easy to do, and you've got plenty of time before liftoff. So click the donate button and give what you can to help save a child's life.
And this is super exciting. We haven't seen the crew for a little bit, but they have been busy. This is Dr. Cyan Proctor suiting up in the Falcon support building.
There is the new SpaceX suit up room again. This is our newest facility for suit up, which is a little bit different than what you've seen if you've been following along our NASA crew missions. Again, the crew missions suit up in the O&C building. This is the new SpaceX suit up room in the Falcon support building.
Yes, it looks very modern, and it matches the suits of the astronauts, which I love. There is a drawing of Dragon in the background there. That is awesome.
So what we see now are the suit technicians assisting the crew to get in their spacesuits, which have all been custom fitted. Make sure that everybody is zipped up and ready to go, and most importantly, comfortable in their suits.
Yeah, all the suits are custom made for the astronauts. The chairs themselves are also custom made for the astronauts. And you'll notice that the suit technicians have some numbers on their back. There are a lot of folks in the room, and with masks and everything, sometimes it's easier just to reference folks by a number. That way the crew can get what they need quickly.
The astronaut that you see standing there on your screen, that is Commander Jared Isaacman with a suit tech helping him get fitted right now.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, this isn't the first time they've worn the flight suits. They put them on during the crew integration training exercise, but when they were here in Hawthorne, for example, they're using test suits, aren't they?
That is correct. So they do, while their suits are being made, because they're custom made, they take a little bit of time to create. They do have some training suits that they utilize until their suits are ready. I don't know if you guys were following along with them on social media, but yeah. I was following them, and when they got to wear their suits for the first time, that was it. I could just see the excitement. So it's really cool to see them put them on for the actual mission today.
And when we say that they're custom fitted, it truly is a custom process specifically for Haley. So as we all know, she is a survivor of pediatric cancer. She had bone cancer. I believe it was her right leg, her right knee. And when she was getting fitted up for the spacesuits, one knee was actually slightly larger than the other. And that was taken into account because, again, we want everybody to be comfortable. We want these suits to fit appropriately because that's part of the safety factor as well. So, yeah, this customization that we go through, so there's really no opportunity for anybody to switch spacesuits. That's not an option. But specifically for Haley, this was a very important feature of our spacesuits because ultimately it allowed her to have a spacesuit that will keep her safe.
Exactly, and these suits are utilized for safety. In the unlikely event of a depressurization inside of the cabin, the suit provides nitrox and keeps them cool and provides them some oxygen. So it is very, very important that these suits fit them well so that they don't damage them. And again, these suits are basically like an extension or like a spacecraft in itself, right?
Exactly.
On the other hand, if you remember like when Apollo astronauts would walk out of the O&C building, they looked very bulky, giant helmets, looked like lots and lots of layers spacesuit. They're going either outside of the Apollo module, they'll be exposed to vacuum, they're going to be going onto the moon, doing the EVA. So that's a case where they really had to have big, bulky suits to protect them outside. These look nice and streamlined because they're going to be inside of the pressurized Dragon, yet still being able to provide a safety shell around them, just in case something happened in the capsule.
Yeah, speaking about being inside the Dragon, we got to talk a little bit more about the cupola. This mission is going to debut the brand new Dragon cupola. It is It is integrated on top of the Dragon vehicle, and the largest continuous window ever flown in space. Here's a shot of it being installed. So the total viewing area is over 2,000 square inches. And again, it's the largest window ever sent to space by a factor of 2.
Yeah, this is going to be an incredible view for the crew. I think they even mentioned that a couple people can fit inside of the cupola at one time. And you may have seen the cupola on the International Space Station. That's actually a large cupola, but it's made of multiple different pieces put together. So you don't get that continuous view. This cupola will actually allow them to get that full continuous view. And since, as John mentioned, they won't be going exterior to the Dragon, it'll almost kind of give that feel.
So on screen right now, this is some testing that we've done with the cupola, sending it through extreme temperatures, and you can see some rods pushing in on the scratch layer of the cupola window to make sure that, again, it is first and foremost safe for the astronauts and does what it needs to do while in space.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. Very excited to see that. And we've got an inside look into the SpaceX suit-up room once again, and we have the full crew there, and that is Haley Arsenault on your screen. She is the medical officer on this mission for today.
And Chris, I think he's thinking he has a lightsaber in his hand. They're having a blast. Next, right behind Haley is Dr. Cyan Proctor, and talking to her is Chris Zembrowski. Again, Dr. Cyan Proctor is the pilot for the mission, and Chris Zembrowski is the mission specialist.
Once again, this is the SpaceX suit-up room located in what you hear us refer to as FSB, or Falcon Support Building, which is a building located just outside of the perimeter of Pad 39A. This is our new suit-up room, and while it might look like you're watching a black and white movie, it is in full color there. We can see that everything is, like we mentioned before, super streamlined, super clean, and wow, those spacesuits really stand out. They look so great. I have a feeling they might be lining up for a photo here.
Yeah.
I also like, we've got the display in the room, so they can see the Dragon capsule they're going to be headed to shortly. Crew access arm in position while the advanced team begins working to get the capsule ready for them.
And there they are. Looks like they're finally all suited, maybe getting ready potentially for some photos here. We actually asked the crew what it was like to put their custom spacesuit on for the very first time, and here's what they had to say.
I was so excited and so smiley when I got to put on my actual spacesuit, because I'd gone through several fittings over the last couple of months, and when I first saw my spacesuit, I just couldn't believe that is what I was going to wear on the way to space.
The idea of having a spacesuit with my name on it and designed specifically for me was, I mean, it was the most amazing, fantastical thing.
Feeling-wise, it felt very much just like the training suit. So training, I mean, consistency in training versus how we're going to fly, spot on.
Since it's custom made for you, it's a little bit tighter, a little more snug. It's got a nicer look and feel to it, very clean.
I wish I got to keep it because I would be wearing that thing all the time. It's awesome. It fits perfectly. They did an amazing job. I love it.
The overwhelming part of it, though, is that knowing that my name is on one side and Inspiration4 patches on the other, and this is what I'll be wearing when I go to space, and that is awesome.
Just an honor to wear it, and it's really very special.
It's beautiful. It's sleek. Putting it on, I felt like a real astronaut and really excited. It's just another one of those things that makes all of this more real.
We're approaching T-minus 3 hours and 7 minutes until liftoff of Inspiration4. If you've just joined us recently, this is the first all-civilian orbital mission, and we have 4 individuals traveling on Crew Dragon to space today. They are suited up, and we are anticipating them to walk out of the Falcon support building, hop in those Teslas that you see there on your screen, and make their final transport to pad 39A.
Yes, the pad where the vehicle is awaiting them, it's about 2 or 3 minute drive away. It's technically a walkable distance, but we're not going to make the astronauts walk in the hot Florida weather. So they get to hop back into the really cool Teslas and make a short drive to the pad.
And
yeah, Andy, I don't know about you. It's about 2,000 feet from the Falcon support building up to the crown on pad 39A. So while that's less than half a mile or so, they've also got their environmental control systems. And I remember from like Apollo, when they would come out, they had these large, bulky environmental control systems, portable life support. Those weighed about 25 kilograms. So walking half a mile, carrying a 50-some pound weight. Yeah, granted, the suits are a lot lighter, environmental control's a lot lighter. I'll take the Tesla ride.
For sure.
You did turn off the forward ram lights, the restricted ability to maneuver lights, and the masthead and range light, correct?
Pausing for some comms.
Hey, sorry,
there.
can you come back with that one more time?
I just want to confirm you turned on extra nav lights besides the side lights and the turn light. Is that correct?
Hey, yeah, we ran an auto sequence a few minutes ago to basically turn on the nav lights associated with being on DP.
Okay, got that. Sounds good. Just wanted to verify.
Just listening into some comms there, and the Inspiration4 crew is getting ready to exit the SpaceX suit-up room, get into their Teslas just a few minutes from now, and then make their way to the launch pad.
Yeah, it's super exciting. We started this broadcast maybe an hour ago, but it seems like it's going by so quickly.
As we mentioned before, the crew is completely suited up at this point. They're going to be walking out to the Teslas, which there we can see an aerial view of the Falcon support building. Again, this is about 2,000 feet away from the launch pad itself, but we're going to allow them to drive, save some sweat. They have a more important job to do here in just a little over 3 hours.
Yeah, and these Teslas are actually designed and custom made for the spacesuits. Actually, they can hook up their umbilicals to the Teslas, and there is the Inspiration4 crew walking out of the SpaceX suit-up room, looking very excited.
Some fist bumps going around.
And their suit tech crew is also going along with them. Looks like they're taking some final photos before they hop back into those Teslas.
So this is the first time that the crew has stepped outside today in their flight suits. They're now entering the Teslas. Love this new shot that we have for this launch. We are inside the Teslas there with the crew. And we've been told that they have a playlist. We unfortunately can't hear it for ourselves. But hopefully we'll be able to see them, singing along. I would love some space car karaoke.
Hey, you never know. We might be able to see that on the camera there. And this looks like Jared Isaacman, the commander for Inspiration4, with Chris Sombrowski, again, hooking up their umbilical ports to the Teslas. That'll keep them cool for this short ride to the launch pad.
Yeah, so the stuff that's going to be pumped through those umbilicals, while the umbilicals are used for communications, while actually in Dragon right now, those are being utilized to pump nitrox, which is basically the same air that you would breathe if you were scuba diving. It's that same nitrogen-oxygen mixture, and we are pumping it through the spacesuits to make sure that they all stay cool and comfortable while they are in their suits.
Yeah, the suits are super complex, and you can consider them sort of a spacecraft of their own. They actually will regulate and monitor the temperature inside the spacesuits, and if it gets a little too warm, they'll start flowing that nitrox in to keep the astronauts nice and cool and comfortable.
So we see 2 Teslas parked there, and one of them will have Cyan and Haley, and the other will have Jared and Chris. And both of those crews in there, we can see the Falcon wing doors closing.
CBRL on recovery point.
Go ahead. Go ahead, water recovery.
A few minutes out. Yes, sir. Can you catch me?
Hey, yeah, I copy. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to verify that we are about 31 minutes out from this balloon. We are going to turn it on, get a stat log, and then do 30 seconds on each decoder, stopping on decoder 3, and then we'll send the first balloon up with.
Affirm. That sounds good.
Okay, copy that. Thank you.
I'm also having the board.
The crew is now passing the hangar at pad 39A. This is where the spacecraft and launch vehicle are integrated together horizontally. This building is also known as the Horizontal Integration Facility. And they are now passing the gates at pad 39A. This is the safety perimeter at the pad.
And you can see how close that launch pad is to the Falcon support building. That was just a very, very short drive.
You got some great weather in Florida. The crew is making their way uphill, and towards the crest of that hill is Falcon 9 and Dragon awaiting them. This is a great drone shot of the facility and launch pad.
Now, while we have this great view, I want to take a second to talk a little bit about the history, because this is hollowed ground that we're approaching here. Pad 39A is the launch pad where NASA sent the first humans to the moon. This is where Apollo 11 launched from, and as well as the first ever Saturn V rocket launched from there. This is also a launch pad where the last Apollo mission launched from, Apollo 17. It was after the Apollo program ended, it was then refurbished for the space shuttle program, and the majority of space shuttle missions departed Earth from this launch pad, including the final space shuttle mission, Atlantis STS-135, in 2011. In 2014, SpaceX signed the lease agreement with NASA for this launch pad, and we then began to make safety and functional upgrades. So what you see there is the base of what used to be the fixed service structure from the shuttle days. So everybody might recall that iconic pad from the shuttle days, near and dear to my heart personally. And we did have to remove the rotating service structure portion of the pad for safety, and also it was just unnecessary for Falcon 9. But the bones of the fixed service structure are still there. What we see here is a view of the elevator shaft, and this is the same elevator shaft used these astronauts getting their first look at Falcon 9 on launch day. There it is.
The famous lean back.
Must be breathtaking for them. You can almost see the size of how, we're close up on the crew right now, but how far they have to lean back to look at the top of the vehicle.
It's a shame they don't wander over and look at the business end of the Falcon 9. Kate, you're talking about the history of the pad. They built what's essentially a giant concrete structure on the Florida land back in the early 60s. And you've got about a 5% grade that we saw them drive uphill to get up to the crown there. Mm-hmm. But if you go over to where the Falcon 9 is, centered up above the flame bucket, that's about a 13-meter drop down to the bottom of the fire brick. So, that gives you an idea of what it takes to channel the nearly 2 million pounds of thrust.
I just want to point out, it looked like we had a team lean back there. I don't think we've seen that yet.
And this crew grew so close to each other. And if you haven't seen the Netflix documentary Countdown Inspiration4 Mission to Space, you can really see how they grew as a team and a family, and you can even see it here on the screen.
For sure. Something that I really appreciated, I forget who pointed it out, but it was one of these four. noted that each of them are in a different decade in their life.
Yeah.
So Haley is 29. Chris Zembrowski is 41. Dr. Proctor is 51. And Jared Isaacman is 38. So they're all in a different decade in their life, and this mission has brought them together, and the camaraderie is evident pretty much every step they take.
And it looks like Dr. Cyan Proctor and Haley Arsenault are the first to enter one of the elevators, waving.
Just kidding.
That's happened to everyone.
So they're going to take this elevator up to the 255-foot level. And so this elevator shaft is not marked by floor levels, but rather foot levels. So they're literally riding up to 250 feet above ground. The exit of those elevators are there. And they will exit the elevators and then climb up a small set of stairs to the level above, which is where the crew access arm. And the reason for this is that Falcon 9 crew loading is a little bit higher than where the shuttle crew loading occurred. So the 255-foot level is where shuttle crew, and there they are, Dr.
That's a
Cyan
fast
Proctor.
elevator.
It is. It really is. I've been in it a few times. You leave your stomach on the ground when it takes off.
Yes, so Kate, you were mentioning some of sort of the guts, so to speak, are the same. The elevator is the same, minus some maintenance and needed maintenance. And so there's a phone at the fixed service structure as well. That is also the same phone that astronauts in the Apollo days would use to make their final phone call before boarding the vehicle.
Of course. And the webcasts back in the Apollo days were a little different than the webcasts now. And so it was a true surprise to the families when the Apollo crews would call home and say hello before hopping in their spaceship. Now it's less of a secret. But yeah, Andy, you're right. That's still the same phone. So what we see here is the crew kind of hanging out there on this level.
And again, as I've mentioned throughout this, every step of this process is written into the procedure. So they actually put in time to make sure that they have time to call a family member or friend.
Absolutely. So it looks like Chris and Jared have now gotten into the second elevator and are now making their way up to the 255-foot level.
And if you're just now joining us, you are currently tuned into the Inspiration4 crew mission to space. This is the very first all-civilian crew to orbit, and exiting the elevator is Chris Zembrowski, the mission specialist, with Jared Isaacman, the commander of the mission today.
And we mentioned a little bit about the closeout technicians and suit technicians. Again, they are there to support the astronauts, ingress, get buckled in. Before we close the side hatch, they'll be supporting with an interior foreign object debris checkout, and then also assist with the side hatch close. You'll notice some markings on the floor. These are very important. In case of an emergency, this is the egress direction that the crew and support team will need to follow to make their way back down and be safe.
Yeah, these arrows actually point to what are basically slide wire emergency exits. So it's what it sounds like. It's a basket on a slide wire. They are the same baskets that were utilized again in the shuttle program. They have been repurposed and modified for safety features, and then of course raised up to this level from the 255-foot level. So only utilized in the case of an emergency. But we've been talking a lot about how the crew has been undergoing training since March, and actually egress training is part of it. So they are prepared for all nominal situations as well as off-nominal ones in the unlikely event of an emergency. And that's what those arrows are essentially pointing to, is the quickest path to safety.
what you're seeing on your screen is the Inspiration4 crew, all 4 members standing by as each one of them gets to make their phone call on the historic phone that has been there since the Apollo missions. I think it even still has the same analog buttons on there, so no digital iPhones there. It's the original phone that they get to utilize.
Can confirm it is a rotary phone.
Love that.
So yeah, we are under the 3-hour mark now. The crew woke up about 4 hours ago, performed some medical checks. We saw them walk out of Hangar X, hopped into their Teslas, and made their way to the Falcon support building, where they donned the space suits that you see on screen right now. They took another ride to Launch Pad 39A, went up the elevator, went up a flight of stairs, and now they are making their way through the crew access arm. That is the corridor that you see on screen right now.
And what a sight to see with them hugging as they're walking. Oh, they look so excited.
So these are essentially the last steps that they will take on planet Earth for the next 3 days. Obviously taking a moment to enjoy the view, smell the roses if there were any.
They're just absolutely excited and ecstatic.
Yeah, their excitement is radiating. It's making me very excited.
Yes,
We're getting
yes.
very close. Again, just under 3 hours until liftoff. And some dancing.
Ooh. Haley's getting very excited again. She's going to be the youngest American in space and the first with a prosthetic.
So what Haley has just entered into now is what we call the White Room, and it's an environmentally controlled room. It keeps out dust, dirt, humidity, bugs, of course, because it's Florida, and essentially keeps it environmentally stable for the crew. If you look just above Dr. Proctor's helmet there, you can see a seal. It's a black seal, and it basically seals in the room. That gets installed and compressed against the capsule to maintain the cleanliness of the spacecraft. And here we can see one of my favorite traditions for SpaceX crewed flights. They are adding their signatures to the wall of the White Room. So because this is the first orbital all-civilian mission, they're signing their names next to the X logo. For previous NASA crew missions, the NASA astronauts have signed their name there next to the NASA meatball to the left.
Yes, and all members of the crew will get an opportunity to sign. And if you are wondering, this is penciled into part of their procedures to grab the Sharpie and sign the wall.
Yep, it's actually written in for the advanced team, which is the group of people that arrive to the pad prior to the crew, and they are the advanced team prepares the pad and everything in the White Room with all the tools necessary for closeout operations. And Sharpie is one of the tools listed in the procedure for the advanced team to ensure is there prior to the crew's arrival.
And one final hug. So in the background, around the seal, you can see that is Dragon, and the side hatch is open. In a few minutes here, we will be seeing the crew enter or ingress the Dragon with the assistance of the closeout technicians.
Also affectionately known as the SpaceX Ninjas.
SpaceX Ninjas, yes.
And there you can see Jared Isaacman and Chris Dombrowski also making their way across the crew arm to the White Room to join the rest of their crew. Also getting a moment to take in some of the sights. And it's such a nice day over there in Florida. It's
a great day.
As John mentioned earlier, we were only 10% likelihood of violating launch conditions, which is a rarity for Florida, especially this time of year. So, you know, if you've got a blue sky day like they have, you got to stop and enjoy it.
Yeah, I think, 10%, that's not only ascent weather, contingency splashdown, and planned splashdown in 3 days. So you're really having to get everything to come together. So I hope we can use this day. It looks great.
Yeah, that's a great point. So in selection and ultimately just giving the final go or no-go decision point for launch today, the splashdown weather in 3 days was also an important factor for consideration because that's part of the journey as opposed to missions to the International Space Station, where the NASA astronauts are typically on board station for a couple of months. We don't have to worry about splashdown weather then, because who knows. But at this point, because the astronauts are coming home in 3 days, we did have to do quite a bit of evaluation for those splashdown conditions prior to ultimately proceeding into what we see here today.
You could see on your screen that Dr. Cyan, Proctor, and Haley Arsenault have ingressed the vehicle. Again, ingress is just a aerospace word for entering. They're now working on getting strapped into their seats, and it looks like Jared and Chris are awaiting their turn to ingress Dragon.
Yeah, you might have seen that one of the SpaceX ninjas, let's call it, was inspecting the floor where Dr. Cyan was walking prior to getting into the capsule.
SpaceX Dragon for initial contact.
Dragon, I have you loud and clear. Good morning.
Good morning. We've got you loud and clear, too. It's a beautiful day.
It sure is. Welcome to have you aboard.
So that was Dr. Cyan Proctor just doing an initial comm check with SpaceX core Sarah Gillis back here in Mission Control. And we just saw Jared add his signature to the wall, and Jared and Chris are now getting ready to ingress to the capsule as well.
Yeah, we'll be hearing more of those comm checks as we get closer to T0. One thing to note are those beeps that you hear. Those are Quindar tones, and those help to clear the air. That way the message can be sent and received as clear as possible. But again, as we continue to get closer and march towards T0, we'll be hearing a lot of both Sarah Gillis and the astronauts communicating back and forth to make sure all systems are good for liftoff.
Yeah, that's a great point. We'll hear quite a bit of communication, as you said, Andy, and the communication from Dragon to anyone and anyone to Dragon is actually structured. So as you just said, yeah, there's that Quindar tone, that ping, which is an indication of incoming comms. And then whoever is calling states the destination of their call. So in that case, they called SpaceX, and then they identified themselves as Dragon afterwards. So we heard the ping, SpaceX Dragon, indicating the Dragon capsule was calling SpaceX.
And on your right-hand screen, we've got an inside look live inside of Dragon. We have Haley in seat number 1. She called it the window seat. Looks like she's got her 5-point harness already on. Dr. Cyan Proctor sitting in seat 3. That is the pilot seat. And looks like she's getting waiting to get her harness strapped on shortly here. Chris just entered the vehicle as well and sat in seat number 4 and looks very excited.
He did say he was going to have a very big grin on launch day.
Yeah, he did.
And he does. He is in seat number 4 as the mission specialist for this mission.
And now about to ingress is Commander Jared Isaacman.
This is so exciting to finally see this crew getting into their seats. These are their customized seats inside of Dragon. Again, the spacesuit and the seat are basically designed together, and they're custom made for each of the crew members. We have the technicians there to help get them strapped in, get their harnesses on, get their umbilical ports plugged in.
Yeah, the seats are really interesting because they all look the same. However, each, as you mentioned, yeah, they are customized basically in terms of small, medium, and large in 3 different ways. So there's the bucket where you actually sit. There's the length of the footrest, as well as the length of the armrest. So each of those 3 components are all sized small, medium, and large, basically, to help make sure that each crew member can fit comfortably in their seat and safely.
This is a really cool view of the side hatch. If you look closely on the right thigh of everyone's spacesuit, there's a port. It's a black port. Jesse mentioned an umbilical. That is where the umbilical will plug into each of the crew's respective suits from the chair. And again, this houses the electronics, things like communication, as well as air in the form of nitrox.
And what we see there is the iPad that Dr. Proctor will use throughout flight. Like we mentioned before, she is the pilot. And what we'll see shortly is the rotation of the seats. The seats will be rotated backwards so that the crew will almost be on their backs and allowing them better access to that touchscreen panel there that is above their heads.
Yeah, I think when we do we've got the same camera angle we've seen before when we get seat rotation. Also gives you an idea of the cargo that's underneath.
Yeah.
That they'll be using during their 3-day orbits around the Earth. So they'll get access to that, be able to unpack it, get out the experiments, get out dinner, things like that.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, the cargo beneath the crew in this vehicle right now, Dragon can carry up to 7 passengers. For today's mission, we only have 4 crew members, so it's only configured with 4 seats. So where the 3 additional seats are, we have replaced it with a stowage for cargo.
Which is super important for this mission because, like we said before, they're stuck inside Dragon the whole time. There's no getting out this time.
Yep.
Also, Jesse, you mentioned Haley's got the window seat. Just to go back a little bit in history, Dragon from the very beginning was designed with a window seat. In fact, when they show shots of us here on the mezzanine, we've got the first recovered Dragon right behind us. And so we put windows in that, not because cargo needed a window to look out.
The block of cheese.
But the block of cheese on the second Falcon 9 Dragon flight that came back. But we wanted to show that we could do space qualified windows early on because we knew when we finally got around to the Dragon version with people on board, that they're going to want to look out and see what it's like.
And honestly, if you've been following along with the NASA crew missions that have been going on up at the space station, my absolute favorite views that we've gotten over a year now that we've been operational with NASA crew to the space station have been pictures of the astronauts that they have taken from inside Crew Dragon, looking through that window and seeing space beyond.
Of course, this time, not only do they have the hatch windows, but they've got the cupola.
The cupola.
Oh, yeah, I'm looking forward to, some of them, have got astronomy backgrounds, for example, what it'll be on the night side when they're in eclipse in the Earth's shadow, to where they really can see the stars. In the daylight, people always go, why can't you see stars? Well, the sun is so bright, and, any reflection off of anything just, ruins your vision.
Absolutely.
But yeah, every 45 minutes, you get another sunset, you get into eclipse. And yeah, I'd want to be up in that cupola looking out,
I feel like it's
going to be those constellations.
It's going to be a very, very popular spot on Dragon while they're in orbit.
Prime real estate for sure.
This is a really cool shot. So on the left-hand side of your screen is the Dragon capsule resilience. And so that top conical portion, that is the capsule, and that is where the crew on the right-hand side of the screen is currently sitting. The bottom half of the Dragon vehicle is the trunk. There is a sort of a dark side and a lighter side. The dark side are solar panels, which will draw energy from the sun to keep Dragon powered throughout their mission. But this is super cool because you see the exterior, and then inside is the crew having a jolly old time with the closeout technicians.
While the pressurized section of Dragon, which is the top portion, will be returning to Earth, the trunk will not be. That part is not reusable. Prior to splashdown, the trunk will actually be jettisoned, and the capsule will turn around and expose the heat shield, which is basically right between what we see there. It's a tiny, slim piece of silver there just above the trunk. So yeah, that trunk will not be coming home, but it is a super important piece of Dragon because, as Andy just mentioned, the dark side there, I am refraining my Star Wars reference, so I'm saving that for later. But yeah, the dark side that we see there are the solar panels that will be generating the power to the batteries for everything that they need. The crew, like we talked about before, they got a lot of science experiments they're going to be performing, but they're also going to be taking video, need to charge their phones, all that good stuff, of course.
We haven't seen the over-the-shoulder shot where you can pick up the crew displays, you know, and you get more of that once they rotate them into position. But one of the things that you just struck even looking at this, if you've been to the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum, for example, and you've looked, you know, at the Apollo command module, Apollo 11, or even some of the older hardware, it's how clean it is in there. You look back, Apollo had, I think at last count, about 566 switches.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, mechanical switches. So you had to have the gloves, you had to be able to toggle them. And, you know, we've seen a lot of stuff in history where somebody throws the right switch at the right time and the mission keeps going. But in this case, you know, it's software touch display panels with very few switches. And so it gives a much cleaner looking vehicle.
Looks like we got some team camaraderie happening yet again. Looks like Chris Zimbrowski there, the last one getting buckled up into that 5-point safety harness. I wonder if he's having flashbacks to centrifuge training right now.
Except now he's got 3 friends next to him in the cabin, so.
Yeah, actually, hopefully that'll make this trip a little easier for them to be right next to each other.
So
one other thing, sorry to interrupt.
I was just going to say there on the left, Dr. Cyan Proctor, the pilot for today's mission, and Commander Jared Isaacman on the right.
Yep. One thing that also strikes me is when you watch some of the videos of the shuttle launches, the shuttle essentially had astronauts on multiple levels. So you have the commander and the pilot up at the very nose of the shuttle, you know, with all of the switches, everything around them. So that means that the poor ninjas in those days had to climb up and, you know, kind of step on everybody else's chair just to be able to pull the straps, make sure that the 2 folks at the top were tied in. Here you've got all 4 of them side by side, and at least for the ground crew, the SpaceX folks in the black outfits with the numbers, it's a lot easier. They're looking right at them, and it's not the you know, crowded airplane flight, excuse me, you know, while I drop my luggage on your head while I'm trying to get it lifted up.
Yeah, that is an important thing to note. Every crew that has flown with Dragon, when they come back, we do get a lot of feedback, and we take that feedback seriously to try to upgrade the Dragon, and even small things like where to store personal items, where the food's located. We want to make sure that the flight with Dragon and Falcon 9 is as comfortable as possible. So reiterating the design is a core principle of Dragon design.
Absolutely. And what better feedback is there than the people that have ridden firsthand in these seats? So what we just saw there were final checks and basically everybody making sure that all their zippers are in the right place. We saw the closeout lead, other final fist bumps. We saw one of the closeout leads perform a quick swipe of the visor closure area on Chris and Cyan, just to make sure that there was no FOD there in the seal in preparation for when they closed the visors prior to liftoff. So we mentioned before that the crew has undergone immense amounts of training since they found out that this was happening back in March. And I mentioned before the centrifuge training. They've also done a zero-G flight. They trained in fighter pilots to as fighter pilots in ex-military jets to simulate even more G-forces. And one thing that we did recently was a full dress rehearsal with the crew just on Sunday. So the crew got fully suited up and they entered Dragon just as we see them now. But today must feel so different to them because even though they've been in these seats one other time in the suits and we did everything as if it were real, today's the day that they're actually going to space. And so I can imagine that, at least if it were me, that seatbelt might feel tighter and tighter with every minute that passes. I mean, we're just about 2 hours and 30 minutes from launch at this point.
And remember, the crew got the weather briefing as well. And so they know today is a great day for launch. And so it is looking more and more likely as, again, we continue to march down towards T0. Speaking of the suits that you see the crews don right now, we definitely took safety, comfort, and style into consideration. Let's take a look at how these were made.
I think one of the things that was important in the development of the suit was to make it easy to use, something that the crew just has to literally plug in when they sit down, and then the suit kind of takes care of itself from there. So the suit is really kind of one part of the bigger Dragon system. It's really part of the vehicle. So we think of it as kind of a suit seat system. So the seat that the crew is in and the suit are in a lot of ways working together. And so it made sense that we were designing Dragon in-house to also design the suit.
Our spacesuits is completely designed in-house. It's built here in Hawthorne, California, in the same building as the rocket and the capsule. The spacesuit is custom-made for each crew member, and that is to optimize the fit for the crew member.
We definitely wanted to innovate and we wanted it to look inspiring, but first and foremost, we wanted it to be safe and reliable. The spacesuit's primary purpose is to protect the crew in the unlikely event that the cabin were to depressurize. But the suit does a number of additional things. It provides cooling and communication to the crew inside of the suit, provides them hearing protection, and the outer layer of the suit is flame resistant, so it provides flame protection as well. When the crew gets in the capsule, they get in their seats and they plug the suit into the umbilical that's attached to the seat. And the umbilical is providing everything that the suit needs. So it provides the avionics or electronics for communications. It's providing the air to cool the suit, and it also provides gas.
Good morning, Dragon. I have you loud and clear. How me?
We hear you loud and clear, sir.
And copy that, Jared. Let me know when you all are ready for comm checks.
In SpaceX Dragon, we're ready for our comm checks.
Copy that. Stand by for umbilical comm check. Commander, pilot, MS1, MS2, comm check.
And Brooke has you loud and clear. How me?
Loud and clear as well.
Leo has you loud and clear. How me?
I have you loud and clear, Leo.
Nova has you loud and clear. How me?
Loud and clear, Nova.
Hanks has you loud and clear. Sarah, how me?
And Hanks, I have you loud and clear as well. Umbilical comm checks complete. Stand by for ground station comm checks. Dragon SpaceX ComCheck.
And Dragon has you loud and clear. How many?
Core loud and clear. Ground station ComCheck complete. Stand by for Tetris ComCheck. Dragon SpaceX ComCheck.
And Dragon has you loud and clear. How many?
Core loud and clear. Tetris ComCheck complete. Stand by for ComChecks with MD and LD in the launch configuration.
Dragon, MD on countdown 1. ComCheck.
Dragon has you loud and clear. MD, how many?
MD loud and clear. Stand by for ComCheck over Dragon to ground. Dragon, MD on Dragon to ground. ComCheck.
Dragon has you loud and clear. MD, how many?
MD loud and clear. Stand by for ComChecks with LD.
Dragon, LD on countdown 1. ComCheck.
Dragon has you loud and clear. LD, how many?
LD loud and clear. Stand by for ComCheck over Dragon to ground. Dragon, LD on Dragon to ground. ComCheck.
Dragon has you loud and clear. LD, how many?
LD loud and clear.
Dragon SpaceX. Launch configuration ComChecks are complete. Report when ready for seat rotation per section 2 of 4.100.
And copy that, SpaceX. Step into section 2. SpaceX, Dragon, we're ready for seat rotation.
Copy that, Dragon. We will report when initiating.
We're T-minus 2 hours, 23 minutes, and 12 seconds, counting down for what is planned to be an on-time launch. T0 tonight is 8 hours, 2 minutes, 56 seconds p.m. Eastern Daylight Saving Time, or just about 3 minutes after midnight Universal Time. Right now, we're looking at a view of the Inspiration4 crew. They're all in the capsule.
Dragon SpaceX initiating seat rotation.
And we are moving into seat rotation now. Everybody is anchored in the seat with the belts. We've done final checks, make sure they are all buttoned up and ready to go. And what we're going to do now is send command to the motor actuators under the seat. It'll rotate the 4 crew. Chris there on the left having a little fun there. They'll rotate them up into the launch position, which also gets them access to the launch displays that are overhead. I think right now they're also just waving out through the hatch at the ingress team that is now moved out of the way to make sure. And now the seats are rotating. This just takes several seconds to get them in position.
The launch position.
And there you heard a call out from Core to the Dragon crew.
SpaceX, we should say.
So the team's now in final position. We're right now in the countdown. Typically, this comes at about T-minus 2 hours, 15 minutes. So the good news is we're running about 6 minutes ahead of the countdown. Next major activities up in the Dragon area will be just verifying everything is ready for closeout. We'll be doing leak checks of the suits. We'll be closing the hatch, doing leak checks of the capsule hatch. And then eventually, T-minus 1 hour.
For awareness, our closeout lead is going to be climbing in to look at something on the cargo pallet, just for awareness.
And copy that, Tara.
And that's one of the examples. The closeout team is still there. They can still get inside the capsule. The hatch is open. And so they'll be able to check to see if everything is tied down correctly, nothing's loose in the cargo that's underneath the seats. But as I was saying, at T-minus 1 hour, the plan is the team will leave the crew access arm. They'll get out of the blast danger area, and that'll leave just the Inspiration4 folks on top of the Falcon 9 for the last 15 minutes or so of the countdown as we prepare to head to space. Status right now, everything continues to look good. Falcon 9 has been quiet since we started the webcast. It'll start to pick up at T-minus 2 hours. We've got a few flight termination system checks that we go through. The biggies will come at about T-minus 1 hour when we're doing Merlin engine checks on the first and second stage, making sure engines are primed in with fuel. And then we'll carry the countdown from there as is typical. So a lot will pick up there. Dragon is pretty much in the mechanical activity right now. Earlier this afternoon, just around T-minus 4 hours, the Draco thrusters, these are the ones that are used for steering, orbit adjust, and to deorbit the capsule. We opened valves and pressurized the manifolds. So the Draco thrusters are in a flight pressurized configuration. And pretty much right now, it is just getting the crew ready and getting the hatch closed and getting off of the pad. On the weather front, no new information other than the weather continues to look good. We've been talking about it. In addition, we are beginning to release balloons to measure the upper altitude winds, but everything is looking good in that case. So right now, the weather, the range, Falcon 9 Dragon, and the crew of Inspiration4 all looking good for an on-time launch in just under 2 hours, 19 minutes.
And shortly, the crew will perform some suit leak checks. And these suit leak checks are a part of a series of checks to make sure that the crew is in great shape before liftoff. However, there is one check that some of us at SpaceX thought was missing from the process. It's a very important one, so we thought we should clear it up now before we go any further.
All right, if I had to choose between Star Wars, Star Trek, and then one of my other favorites is Stargate, SG-1, I would rather trek across the universe than fight my way.
I've heard, are you a Star Wars guy? Are you a Star Trek guy? Those used to be true. I really think I'm a Battlestar Galactica guy, to be honest.
There's no question it's Star Wars. I'm a Star Wars fan, for sure. I would say that if I had to guess, it's a split crew between Star Wars and Star Trek. I don't know if anyone else would have dropped Battlestar Galactica. I don't know on that one.
Can't beat Captain Adama.
I think Jared is Star Wars. Cyan is Star Wars. Chris is the wild card, but I think he's Star Wars.
Oh, Jared is definitely Star Wars. I think Chris is probably Star Trek, but I'm not 100% sure. And I would think that Haley she's the youngest. So I think maybe Star Wars. I think Star Trek is too old for her.
Dragon SpaceX, you are go for Section 3, suit check preparation.
I kind of am. I'm a medical officer, so.
I don't know if we're like completely unified around that. I mean, there is other, sci-fi, spacey stuff that comes before Star Trek.
Okay.
They don't know they're wrong. Like that just they'll learn that over time. Like.
I just love that. And I gotta say, that kind of sounded a little Sith Lord-esque from Jared there. But I'm with Jared. I'm Team Star Wars all the way.
Yeah, I think I'm staying clear from all the discussions. I'm a casual fan of both, but I know there's passionate fans on both sides. I like them both.
Well, in my case, we're just listening. They're getting ready for suit leak checks. If you look in modern day, every day, I was reading the paper over the weekend, and I saw the new film museum here in Los Angeles. Part of that was described as the Death Star. On the other hand, on the next page in the paper, they're talking about a mansion up in the hills here above LA as the Starship Enterprise. So you kind of got an equal. But in my case, showing my age, I saw the first Star Trek episode on September 6th of 1966. So I'm Star Trek.
Star Trek for John. Can I pick Mandalorian? Is that okay?
Technically Star Wars, I think.
It's the baby Yoda for me.
Yes, there it is. That one wins over a lot of hearts.
There's nothing wrong with that. So if you've just tuned in, the crew are in their seats. As you can see, they're buckled in. The seats have been rotated back to the launch position. They've undergone comm checks. And everybody, it's hard to see from this angle right here, but there's been a lot of camaraderie and a lot of big old smiles on their faces.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to make note of, we saw the crew respond back to Sarah Gillis, the core, with their call signs. So Jared is Rook, Dr. Cyan is Leo, Haley is Nova, and Chris is Hank. So we might hear some names get interchanged, but they got those call signs when they were doing their jet fighter training, which is a really cool sentence to say. Who else gets to do jet fighter training?
Right, that's very exciting. So only 553 humans have been to orbit, and most of those traveled as part of government or country-specific missions. As a result, the research conducted on those missions, particularly as it relates to humans in space, is often only accessible by the country or government that conducted the research. Now think about the possibilities if the data from all those missions could be made available to the broader science community for research. Inspiration4 is a step in that direction.
Once in orbit, the crew of Inspiration4 will conduct research that has the potential to improve human health here on Earth and for all future space travelers. All biomedical data collected during the mission, things like heart rhythm and rate, blood oxygen saturation, and other things, will be accessible through an open data repository and available for research.
To that end, SpaceX and the Inspiration4 crew are partnering with TRISH, the Translational Research Institute for Space Health, to collect data and biological samples from the crew before, during, and after this historic spaceflight. Part of NASA's Human Research Program, TRISH is a virtual institute that finds and funds disruptive science and medical technology in order to reduce health and performance.
4 good suits.
Copy that, Dragon. We see the same. The closeout team will perform final closeout steps and then exit the capsule. Please report when ready to close the hatch.
Sounds like suit leak checks have been completed. And TRISH is a virtual institute that finds and funds disruptive...
Copy that, SpaceX. We're ready for side hatch closure when you are.
Copy that, Dragon.
Pausing for comms. Disruptive science and medical technology in order to reduce health and performance risks in space explorers.
Yeah, as we're getting ready to close out the side hatch, let's check in with Kate to take a closer look at the experiments the Inspiration4 crew will conduct during their 3 days in orbit.
Thanks, Andy. I'm joined now by Diana Dial from our space operations team here in Hawthorne, and we're going to take a closer look at the research that the Inspiration4 crew will be conducting on orbit.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for having me, and great to be here. We're going to be talking about some of the biomedical research experiments that'll be flying on Inspiration4 today. So off the bat, why are we even doing this? Obviously, our goal is to make spaceflight accessible and safe to everybody. And that means making sure that we understand what happens to the human body when folks go to space. Plus, with a lot of these experiments, we're also getting a better understanding of how to revolutionize healthcare here on Earth.
Now, that seems kind of like an interesting point because a lot of people assume that science done in space doesn't have anything to do with those of us that are still on planet Earth. So can you tell us a little bit about some of the things we see here and how they'll benefit not only us, those of us in space, but also those of us on Earth?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so off the bat, the technologies that we use for space, particularly for medicine, are actually miniaturized, they're mobile, and they can be used by non-physician or non-medically trained individuals. So that means that we can expand access to places where otherwise it's super remote, you might not have a medical provider, and these same technologies that we're going to be using, for example, on Inspiration4, we use in remote care environments here on Earth.
And that handheld portion seems super important because
Absolutely.
In space, weight is everything. So I believe this is an ultrasound reader, and if you're familiar with ultrasound machines, they're usually much bigger and require a lot of training to operate and not possible to go to space. But this is actually what's going to be on board Dragon today.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the butterfly ultrasound. Normally, you guys may be familiar with an ultrasound that you see at the hospital, and it'll be about the size of this table. But this ultrasound device is not only handheld, portable, but also, as we said, can be used by a non-medically trained individual. So during Inspiration4, our astronauts are actually going to be doing medical imaging while in space to better understand how body fluids change in the microgravity environment.
Now, in terms of the other things that we have on the table, I feel like, well, obviously the glasses are the coolest looking. We'll get to those. But how does this actually, like, how do they read when they're viewing, the ultrasound themselves? How do they actually get a readout for that?
Sure. So essentially, this ultrasound just plugs into an iPad or an iPhone. And essentially what they do is they'll plug it in, they'll use a little bit of gel, and then actually be able to apply it to themselves to visualize a number of organ systems in the body. So, for example, due to the fluid shifts in space, we want to make sure that we understand how blood flow moves in the microgravity environment, what happens to the bladder, for example, when it comes to urinary retention, and also we want to see how those fluid shifts could affect, for example, intracranial pressure. And so one of the analogous things that we'll be measuring is ultrasound on the eye. So all of these can be measured super easily using this just plugged in to an iPad or a phone.
And of course, that's important because intracranial fluid impacts vision, and vision changes while you're in space.
Absolutely.
Now, I want to get to the glasses.
Yeah.
They look like fun 3D glasses, but there's no 3D movies on this particular Dragon mission. So can you tell us a little bit about what those are used for and how they're helpful?
Yeah, absolutely. So while these look like a very cool prop, they are in fact for science. So what these glasses do is essentially a number of neurovestibular type of tests. So rewind, when we're here on Earth, our body is adapted to the gravity environment. And that means that folks essentially are able to orient to where they are located in physical space based on connection between the eyes, the inner ears, and the brain. And so what you do with this test is actually put on these glasses. And because
Can I try them on?
Yeah, absolutely. And so as you can see, Kate not only looks really cool, and everything's purple, but if you are to just use one at a time, the idea is that we're actually able to lateralize and localize different halves of the neurovestibular system to better understand when folks are doing a specific set of tests while wearing these glasses, how their adaptation to the spaceflight environment affects how they feel oriented and potentially might have space motion sickness, might feel dizzy or nauseous while they're in microgravity, and then once they return back to Earth.
So in terms of how, like, if I put these glasses on, how are you actually testing what I'm seeing?
Sure. So what would happen is that they would wear these glasses. They'll actually be doing some tests on something like this iPad. And then the results of those tests tell us basically which side and potentially more about what's going on with their neurovestibular system. Again, both in flight and then when they return.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Diana Dial from our Space Ops team here at SpaceX in Hawthorne. Thank you so much for joining us and showing us firsthand some of the science that the Inspiration4 crew will be getting up to over the next 3 days. Let's check back in with Andy to see what's happening out on that pad.
Thanks, Kate and Diana. Super cool experiments. So right now, over the next couple minutes, the crew will be completing final inspections of the spacecraft, followed by hatch close. And so the crew is doing a sweep inside of Dragon to make sure there isn't any foreign object debris, what we like to refer to as FOD. Basically, anything that doesn't belong, that shouldn't be inside Dragon, we want to make sure that that is not there anymore. So right now is a view of the Dragon capsule and the crew access arm to the right-hand side. The Inspiration4 crew members are inside the top section of the Dragon capsule right now. And for those that are just joining us, this is a view from Kennedy Space Center in Florida off of historic launch pad 39A. We are about 2 hours away from liftoff. Everything is looking great today. Weather is looking great, and the crew has just been nothing but a bundle of joy since leaving the hangar, and super excited to be on a part of the mission.
It's crazy to think that, Andy, like you said, this is historic. It's pad 39A at Kennedy, and we can see the Atlantic Ocean there off the coast. And it's really crazy to think that, you know, just in the, what was 1969 was whenever we launched Apollo 11, which was, of course, the first mission that actually landed on the moon. And here we are a few decades later, I should say, launching the first orbital all-civilian crew. And we keep saying all-civilian, and what that really means is non-professional astronauts. So people like us four, and that are now going to space from the very same ground that, you know, Apollo 11 launched from decades ago. And it's, you know, just this transition and evolution of human spaceflight is so awesome to see. And of course, you know, we have a beautiful picture perfect background today. And it's just pretty incredible. And we're very thankful that we're able to, you know, introduce the next era of human spaceflight from this ground. You know, we're standing on the shoulders of giants, and everyone inside that capsule knows that as well.
Yeah, we talked about the Apollo missions and the space shuttle missions. Since SpaceX took over the lease in 2014, we have also been making a little bit of history ourselves. In 2018, we debuted the Falcon Heavy rocket test flight. And for those that remember, that launched Starman.
Yeah.
And Starman is out there right now in his Tesla, exploring space.
Listening to David Bowie.
Listening to David Bowie. Last year, we also returned... last year, we also returned crewed flight from American soil with the Demonstration 2 mission with Bob and Doug. And we also had our first operational crew mission last November as well. So
yeah, and that's actually
to march forward.
And that's actually the capsule that's flying today.
Yes.
That first operational crew mission, Crew 1, which launched in November 2020, that is the same capsule that the Inspiration4 crew is flying in today. We like to refer to it as certified pre-owned.
Yeah, and everything that Kate and Andy just mentioned, you know, without all of that, we wouldn't be here today. And it's incredible to think that literally our 4 all-civilian crew members are sitting in the Dragon capsule right now, about to make the next step in human spaceflight. You know, we've always talked about, even before we were flying crew, that we always wanted to turn rockets into airplanes. Like, how do we turn... you know, how do we turn such a difficult, costly flight into a more affordable and more often flight? And this is one step closer to that major step today, and just so exciting that we're actually here.
Absolutely. Yeah, reusability really is the thing that unlocks access to space. And personally, I am super excited for more people to be able to experience space, because there's something known as the overview effect. And that's essentially the effect that humans experience when they're able to look back upon planet Earth from a different perspective. And I honestly believe that, you know, the more people that get to experience that, the better off planet Earth will be, as well as the human civilization.
Yeah, Dragon today is going to be flying 4 people. It can hold up to 7, so hopefully in the near future we'll see 7 folks flying in Dragon. It is again the first private spacecraft to take humans to the space station, and will be the first private spacecraft to ever take an all-civilian crew to space and orbit. So we've got a really cool animation here of our Dragon vehicle.
So as we mentioned before, the pressurized section, the section that we actually see the crew in, is there at the top. The nose cone will open up and reveal the cupola, the observation dome, and we'll can't wait to see all the exciting views that they're going to see from there. And then if you look at the bottom portion, which the lighter side is reflecting towards us, we'll call it the Jedi side, and then the dark side now. I told you, Team Star Wars all the way. The dark side, which is actually the solar panels, which are one of my favorite things. We build them in-house here at SpaceX, integrate them onto the trunk, and that trunk will not be making its journey home. Unfortunately, that is not one of the reusable components of Dragon. It will be jettisoned prior to the capsule's re-entry through the Earth's atmosphere.
The capsule is what the crew will live in for the next 3 days. The volume of the Dragon is about 328 cubic feet. So once they're in space and in microgravity, they'll be able to utilize that entire space. And with the cupola, they'll actually get just a little bit more room. They get a little bit more volume inside of that capsule.
Yeah, the Dragon capsule itself also is outfitted with some engines. We have 16 Draco engines built into Dragon. We also have 8 Super Draco engines built into 4 separate pods. Super Draco engines are used as part of the launch escape system. We actually disarm that after we get into orbit. When we're in space, the Draco engines take over, and that will do a number of things. Micro adjustments in orbit, as also raising the orbit altitude later on after they depart from the second stage of Falcon 9.
Yeah, so you mentioned orbit there. Dragon is actually going to be orbiting higher than the International Space Station and higher than the Hubble telescope. It'll be orbiting at about 575 kilometers. And like we mentioned before, that observation dome is brand new to this mission. And from that height, views from the space station are amazing, but this crew is going even further. In fact, I think we have some footage of